Devon, welcome to the show.
Hey, my man. Thank you, Jim, for having me. It's a pleasure, man. Thanks for
Uh,
having me.
it's an honor to have you. So let's start off from the beginning. You grew up, as a barefoot boy trying to win a track race and you end up becoming a member of your country's first Olympic bobsled team. You grew up in Olympic Gardens. You grew up in a tough part of Kingston, Jamaica, and you make it to the Olympics, and now you're an international speaker. Tell us about your childhood. Tell us about growing up.
Yeah, sure. So I often joke about Olympic Gardens. I'm like, no, that's not where we raise our Olympians. Although there have been a few. I don't know who went prior to me, Jim, sorry for kind of going the circuitous route here, but then there was a guy called Mike McCollum who was a boxer, and then myself, and now the famous, the legend, Mommy Rocket, Shelley and Fraser Price, who also grew up in Olympic Gardens.
Yeah.
Rough, impoverished, violent neighborhood for sure. That was kind of the environment that you grew up in, especially back when I was growing up in the 70s, mid 70s, early 80s, a lot of gang and political violence. And, you went to bed at nights, hearing gunshots and that kind of stuff. My favorite sport was soccer. I started playing barefooted because I didn't have soccer cleats. I still haven't never owned a pair of soccer cleats, by the way. And started running track barefooted. Yeah, and trying to win a race. You know why? Because I'm Jamaican. I was born and raised in Jamaica, where everybody sprints fast,
They've got a
except
few
me.
good runners from Jamaica,
Except
right?
me, right? I can't sprint fast. So I started, I'm like, damn it, man, I need to win something. So I started running 800 and 1500 meters and started winning. And it just kind of blossomed from there. I kind of caught the Olympic bug, let's say, and decided I would want to pursue that, becoming an Olympic middle distance runner. Of course, that didn't happen. I ended up being a bobsledder. So go figure.
So what would make a kid from Olympic Gardens, from a rough part of Jamaica, rough part of Kingston, believe that you have a shot to go do something amazing? What planted that seed?
That's a really good question. I got two things, and I always go back to my grandmother. Man, you have to blame her for that. So it's her fault. So I spent my early years in rural Jamaica, a place called Saint Elizabeth, a really tiny district called Horton, with my grandmother, who was an amazing storyteller. And the stories I remember most were the ones, and not in any great detail, but the ones she told me about soldiers and how they could perform these amazing feats and not get hurt. Like, jump in a deep gully and not break their legs. And it sounded impossible, but obviously they were doing it. And so it kind of lit up my little imagination. Maybe I could do something like that as well. And that's the thing that inspired me want to be a soldier. But more importantly, I think it inspired me to want to do things that other people thought were difficult or impossible. And then, if you fast forward, it's 1979, the year before the Moscow Olympics. That's when I started training seriously because I was tired of losing. And the ABC Wide World of Sports had a series called Road to Moscow, and in it they highlighted athletes from around the world, different disciplines, different nationalities, and so on. And when we think of Olympic athletes, we think of these superhuman people. And so the first thing I got from watching that series was how average and ordinary they were. They're just average, they're just guys like you and I, Jim. But they had these extraordinary dreams and an equally extraordinary desire to go after those dreams. And so it dawned on me that, and maybe it's an oversimplification. I know it's an oversimplification, but it dawned on me then that anyone could become an Olympic athlete if they just dare to dream big enough and then be willing to put the work in, basically. And so that's when the this idea of becoming an Olympian was birthed. So that drove me to work hard and to pursue that dream. But the other dream, as I mentioned, intonated earlier, was to become a soldier, and more specifically, an army officer. That was like the overarching dream of mine. And so after I achieved that dream, I decided I would go pursue this Olympic thing again. And one thing led to another. And instead of competing in Seoul, I found myself competing in Calgary, 88.
So you skipped over a part of the story that I think is fascinating in its own right, but you became an army officer, but you went to a prestigious military academy in England. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm a graduate of the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst in England, which is a British equivalent of West Point, the school of Winston Churchill, Field Marshal Montgomery, Princess Harry and William. And yes, this barefooted kid from Olympic Gardens in Kingston, also graduated from Sandhurst.
How did that come about?
You know, as I was, we're fortunate to be part of the Commonwealth, man. So Jamaica being part of the Commonwealth, our education, our laws, our military doctrine, and so on is based on the British system. Long story short, I had to go through this rigorous 3-day selection process, after high school, and 33 of us started out this journey over 3 days, and we were whittled down to only three. I was a top pick of three people who got selected, and went through 18 miserable weeks of boot camp in Jamaica, and then they say, okay, fine, you can go to Sandhurst now. So because
Wow.
our Jamaica trains as officers, some of them at Sandhurst, some at Dartmouth, which is for our Coast Guard, the British Naval Academy, and so on. So I got to go to Sandhurst, man.
And what was your role in the military?
I was an infantry officer. To be honest, man, I am as gung ho as they come. I love that stuff. I really loved the army. And so when I came back from Sandhurst as a second lieutenant, we say in English, or in the American army, to the first lieutenant. I was a platoon commander, so I commanded. Just short of my 21st birthday, I'm commanding 30 men, and kind of moved up the ranks, to commanding 120 men as a captain when I
Yeah.
left.
Pretty good for a kid from Olympic Gardens.
So it's not too bad, making some moves.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you feel like you had made it at that point? I mean, you become a captain, you retire as a captain from the army. I mean, that is an incredible place for you to get to. Did you feel like you had made it at that point? I mean, were you still thinking about the Olympics? Was that still part of your dreams?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. So my first two Olympics, by the way, took place while I served in the army. So I was still technically a second lieutenant when this bobsled idea came about, and when I got selected to the team, commanding a platoon, and then by the time I became a lieutenant, I was actually commanding a company, which is it's not so unusual, but still the job for an officer who's a major, like two ranks above me. I was commanding a company. And being in the army, there was a part of me that yes, absolutely, I made it. And so if I could go backwards in the story a little bit, I remember 21 years old, just, it's the summer of 1987. And I'm walking to the officer's mess, gym, and I'm having this intense conversation with myself. I'm like, so you have achieved your big dream. You're an army officer now. What are you going to do with the rest of your life, man? Is this it? And then I go, oh, yeah, the Olympics, because they were coming up in Seoul, Korea. And so I started, training hard, running, hoping I could, get fit enough to qualify for the Summer Olympics. And this bobsled idea came up, and I impressed my commanding officer in a cross country race. They didn't know I was an athlete, quote unquote, and so he thought he'd send his young fit officer to the team trials. Not, I honestly don't think he expected me to make the team. He just wanted to say he sent an officer there because of a philosophy in the army that says officers must always participate. But I went and I made the team. I think they liked my smile, so they selected me. It got interesting afterwards in the sense that here I am on the bobsled team now. Went to the Olympics, and now I'm doing all these promotional tours, promoting Jamaica, and being on TV and going to some nice locations all across the U.S. And now I'm seeing a side of the world that it was impossible for me to see from my vantage point in Olympic Gardens. So when I was growing up, and I looked out and I dreamt of all that I could possibly become, the furthest I could have seen really was the officer course. Like, God, if I could get there, man, there's nothing more I could ask for. Like, this would be like the pinnacle of success for me, right? And the Olympic thing was kind of like icing on the cake. And now here I am. I actually got the icing on the cake, the Olympics, but that opened up a whole new world to me. And now being an army officer was just okay, because there was so much, and I'm like, whoa, there's all that out there too. Whoa, how can I get some of this? Right? And so you go from the kid who couldn't wait to become an army officer because you couldn't ask for more, to being an army officer and going, yeah, being an army officer is cool, but look at all that other stuff that I could become as well. And so that prompted me, inspired me to want to leave the army and go seek greener pastures, as it were.
Do you believe it was your willingness to dream big that opened these doors for you, that allowed you to create amazing things? I mean, I feel like a lot of people are afraid to dream big. They're afraid of failure, right? They're afraid of, maybe I'm just not good enough. I should settle for less. I mean, you don't seem like you're somebody who ever settled. Like, you work hard, like everybody, but everybody you talk to, they work hard. Everybody's busy, everybody's working hard, right? And you alluded to this earlier too. Like, you allowed yourself to dream big and have these big high expectations of yourself. I mean, is that what allowed you to find this kind of success in multiple arenas of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. This idea of dreaming big, and I describe myself as fiercely ambitious. And I just think that if there is this thing out there that's Jim has done, I'm thinking to myself, wow, that looks good. Why can't I do it too? And I want to do it because in my head, it's going to make my life better. But it also, and every dreamer experiences this, right? It also opens you up to failure, and there's a good chance that you might fail, right? So we talk about, and I know your program talks about, failing and how you succeed from that. And so let's talk about Sandhurst for a minute, because when I went to Sandhurst, my goal wasn't to graduate. That was a given. My goal was to win the top award, win the award as a top overseas student. I never did. I never did. I failed. I was young and foolish, and I jumped from a plane and I broke my ankle, and that essentially took me out of the running. Even though I was being considered at near the end there, I didn't feel like I deserved it, to be honest. But to me, that was a massive failure, man, because that was my one and primary focus, to be named the top overseas student. It never happened, but the second prize was that I became an army officer.
Yeah. Do you think you got further because you dreamed big,
Absolutely.
even though you failed at that one in particular?
I have failed, a number of times before that, but I just think that the fact that you don't, for me, failure makes me more determined to work and to succeed. And so, whether it was that failure or, prior failures, like, we have to do these exams in Jamaica to go to from elementary school to high school. Though the first time I did the exam, I failed. Disappointed, because we all will be not discouraged. All I did was just like, you know what, work harder. I worked harder. I passed next time. I went to a pretty good high school in Kingston. So yeah, all of us, I think, all dreamers, all anyone who has succeeded along the way, it's impossible for them to have achieved success without having to deal with some failures along
Yeah.
the way. And the ones that bounce back and keep on pushing, as I like to say, are the ones who go, okay, fine. It didn't work out this time, but I'm going after it again. And in fact, I'm going to go after this other bigger, even bigger goal out there. Let's see how it works.
And tell us about the time when you were presented with this idea of the bobsled team, of trying out for the bobsled team. Take us to that moment. And what were you thinking? What was the scenario, first of all? Like, who approached you about it? And then what was that like? I mean, were you like, yeah, of course I'll do it, or no, I'm still on track for, I'm going to try to make the Olympics as a sprinter? I mean, what was that moment like?
So the first time I actually heard that Jamaica was about to start a bobsled team, I was on duty. We do these 24-hour duties, and I was at the battalion headquarters, and the duty clerk comes in with a big stack of mail. It was a Friday, and I pulled out one piece called the Force Orders. It's kind of like a newsletter, and I'm reading through it, and I get to the part about sports, and I read it, and I didn't quite understand it, and so I read it two or three times, and then deduced that they were asking for people who wanted to undergo dangerous and rigorous training to represent Jamaica in the upcoming Olympics in Calgary. Never heard of Calgary before, basically make themselves known. I'm like, but this, it was so shocking. Like this has to be the most absurd, ridiculous idea ever conceived by man. And I remember saying, nobody could ever get me to go on one of those things. So you fast forward a week or two, and my colonel is walking by my office, and he almost on a whim calls me. And when the colonel calls a second lieutenant, it's never because he wants to shoot the breeze. And I was very nervous because the last time he did call me like that, I got in trouble. Anyway, he says, tell Colonel Barnes. Colonel Barnes was a colonel who was in charge of sports in the army. And he says, tell Colonel Barnes that you'll be going on for the bobsled team trials. Oh, okay. So I'm not in trouble. I just have to go to the bobsled team trials. And, it was really from that moment, though, because he told me I was going to the team trials. So I am going to the team trials. And from that moment, I wanted to make the team because I'm just not wired in a way to go, okay, I went to the team trials and that's fun. No, if I'm going to go, I want to make the team. My challenge was I didn't know how I was going to make the team. I knew I was what I would describe as army fit. I could walk 100 miles with 50 pounds on my back and a rifle in my hand. I didn't think I was sports fit. I hadn't done any sports training for almost 2 years. So discovering that, you had to do some sprinting, 30, 60, 100 meters, 300 meters. And I never ran a 30 or a 60 meter before. I also knew I didn't have enough time to train to get to what I would consider the kind of fitness level that I needed. So most of this was going to be mental now. So I remember going down to the running track on the army base, and I ran 30 meters, I ran 60 meters, I ran 100 meters. I didn't run the 300. I knew what those felt like already. That's what I did for speed work as a middle distance runner. So I wanted to feel what those shorter distances felt like. And I go, okay, all right, now I know what it feels like. I know when I go to the team trials, I'm going to give 150%. And let's see where it lands. And so that was my process.
And so now you make the bobsled team. And I believe the first time you ever saw a bobsled in person was I think September of 1987, and the Olympics were in February, right?
Exactly. September of 87, the team trials were in September, and we went up to Lake Placid, met our coach, and they're like, gentlemen, this is a bobsled, right? and they're like, first of all, it is really crude. It's a really crude piece of equipment. And you're thinking, how the hell am I going to fit in that? It's tight, right? And we saw a bobsled track for the first time. And I remember looking at the track where the corner meets the straightaway and how narrow that is, and thinking, how the hell are we going to fit through there? And as I'm imagining the speeds that we're going at, and I remember thinking to myself afterwards, well, others have done it, so I guess we'll have to figure it out as well. And then that weekend, the American team was there practicing their starts, and we went and we practiced with them. It was really hard to walk on water. I mean, ice. Really hard. Really hard to walk on ice. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this bobsled thing is harder than I thought. And I've been speaking about this aspect, this particular point more recently, that, hey, I had never said it's too hard, I can't do it. I just said it's harder than I thought. And so a lot of times, dreamers, big dreamers, people who are striving for success, they're going to come up on things that is just a little bit beyond them. And they may say, I can't do this yet. It's not, I can't do this, period. I can't do this yet. And that was, in essence, my attitude, wow, this is harder than I thought. So I guess there's more work, a lot more work left for me to do. And it worked out, as it were.
You guys have this monumental task in front of you. And for the listener, if you're not familiar with bobsled, I can't say I'm all that familiar with bobsledding, but You and I were introduced, Devon, through a mutual friend, Ruben Gonzalez. He's a luge athlete, a luger, um, and he was explaining to me how technical it is to ride
Hmm.
a luge sled, and I know that bobsledding is similar, and it is so technical. It's not something. It's not a sled. Like it's not like sled riding. Like when I was a
It's
kid,
not
just jump on a sled and
sledding.
go down a hill. Like it's very technical. It's very dangerous. You have to work as a team. And you guys now have to figure out how to do this together as a team in
Hmm.
just a few months. And you go from never even having laid eyes on one of these to actually, at the Olympics, you perform at a level that was way above what you should have performed. I mean, I think at the one Olympics you placed I mean, I know certainly well above the United States team and well above like the Russians and a lot
Yeah.
of others. I mean,
Hmm.
how did that happen?
There's expectations, belief. I remember years ago I was speaking, and this one guy asked, "At what point back in '88 did you guys think you couldn't do it?" And I'm like, "Well, I've never been asked that question before, but actually, never. We never once doubted that it wasn't going to happen. Were there times when we thought, man, this is really hard? Absolutely. So I think you start out with this belief that it can be done, and there's this expectation. And I know for me personally, I kind of fed into the expectations that Jamaica has for its athletes. Like, it's like, you're on the national team, you better perform, boy, or else, kind of stuff. And so I think people, and it's a lesson for all of us, on our respective teams. I think people rise up to the level of the expectations that are there for them. And so, in our mind, as long as we had on the black, green, and gold of Jamaica, we kind of had to rise up to the level. And so it caused you to work and to compete and to perform in a way that transforms into the results that you see. I mean, I talk about Calgary in particular and how we were working overtime. I described. We're always on the push track when the other teams weren't. I guess they really didn't really need to be on the push track. They have been doing this for 5 years. We're doing it for 5 months. When the other teams were on the ice, on the start line, getting ready to go down the track. And my friend from Australia, Adrian, the Piazza, he has two pictures on Facebook that demonstrates this. Devon Harris is standing behind the line watching the Swiss team go down the track, and I'm standing there watching the Australian team go down the track. Always watching, trying to learn, trying to see, what tip can I pick up that I can apply. And so it was just that kind of all in attitude that I think translated into the results that you saw.
Yeah. Yeah, and I did see some of those pictures online of you. You're observing, you're watching, you're learning, you're looking at, you know, ways you can improve your own game. And so for the listener, like, what is that for you? Like whatever arena of your life that you are trying to up your game, get to that next level, like, are you paying attention? Are you paying attention to what the others are doing? I interviewed Dr. Friedman here recently, a few episodes ago. I mean, go back and check that out. He talks about reverse engineering, looking at the best in the world and what they do and reverse engineering that. But Devon, I want to go a level deeper with you because we're looking at a guy like you who achieved so much in your life. I mean, from a kid growing up in the slums to becoming a captain in the army and graduating from one of the most prestigious military academies in the world to multiple time Olympic athlete to world renowned speaker. I mean, we just keep seeing this success in different areas of your life, and we're looking for the secret, right? And we're going, okay, well, Devon does things a little different. Like, I want that new shiny object. Is it a button I press? Maybe it's a supplement I can take, or maybe Devon has like this certain app that he uses that helps him create success in all these areas of his life. But it's not like the things I keep hearing you say are, you had belief, like the type of words that you use. You didn't say, I can't do this, I can't do this yet, is what you said. And you had this expectation, you had this belief, you use this certain language. I mean, for the listener who is dealing right now with their own Olympic dreams, right? They have that Olympic dream and it feels further off than ever, right? In their own version of the Olympics, right? Maybe it's the promotion, maybe it's starting the business, maybe it's repairing their marriage or running a marathon, whatever it is. And they just can't seem to get there. And they're stuck in that messy middle. What advice would you have for them?
My kind of catchphrase these days is keep on pushing. And obviously, you can immediately say the bobsled analogy there because that's how you start the race. But I think it's so instructive to life as well, man. You have to find a way to keep on pushing. And I think people, when they hear that, they kind of hear struggle, right? That push out. And I talk about that. And I think that's part of the process. Recognizing that it's going to be difficult. You're going to have obstacles in your way, you're going to have setbacks and failures, and you have to find a way to keep pushing yourself over, around, or through them. But it's also the idea of growth, where you are right now in whatever that Olympic dream is, right? Whatever it is that you're trying to create a better situation for in your life, your relationship, your finances, and so on. The skills that you have developed and the knowledge and the experience that you have gained so far, it's only going to bring you to this point. And to get to the next level, you're going to have to expand your comfort zone. People like to talk about getting out of your comfort zone. No, it's basically you're creating a bigger comfort zone. And so you're going to have to expand that comfort zone by going to go learn some new skills.
That's scary. That's hard. That's
Yeah, of
uncomfortable.
course. Well, I never did. I never said it was going to be easy. I never said it's going to be. It is scary. It is scary. You have to be willing to take some risks, man. I know it's a little bit extreme. I talk about my first bobsled run ever, right? I'm going down the track. I'm crawling in a sled behind a guy who had never driven a sled before, and I am scared to death. I'm scared of speed and height, right? And I just remember thinking, if I die, I die, but I'm going, right? No, I agree. That's a little bit extreme. But the lesson here is, Jim, there's a risk to achieving every single dream that you have when you're looking to expand your comfort zone, to put you in a place that allows you to better able to accomplish this goal. It's risky. You may have to pick up and move to a new city or a new country, like I moved from Jamaica to the US, or a brand new industry. Give up this cushy job. Like I gave up my job in the army, and I talk about that we talk about three meals a day, no bills to pay, no wife to obey. Who gives that up? but so you have to give up something. The whole old saying that you have to leave the shore line or lose sight of the shoreline to find new lands. If you're not willing to take that risk, then you're not going to get the reward. And so you have to be willing to take the risk. So I say you manage the risk. You can't do away with them, but you learn to manage them. You learn to do the things that you need to do to mitigate the risks. But sometimes you're gonna fail, and you just have to pick yourself up and keep on pushing.
And I would argue that there's risk in not trying to, right? There's the risk of living a life of unfulfilled potential, of hopes and wishes and dreams that you never even attempted, right? Because that I think is there's a risk there too.
I think that risk is even greater and demoralizing is how I see it. Because I think about going back to old neighborhood and seeing some of the guys that I grew up with. And dude, I've been around the world. And in the same time that I've been around the world, they've been around the block. And I don't know that there were any extenuating circumstances that says, hey, Devon, you're going to go do this and this and this, and they are not. It was just a matter of me wanting, daring to dream, and was willing to be uncomfortable, willing to, fail and feel stupid, maybe, and having it work out in my favor, as opposed to go, this is my world, this is my comfort zone, this is where I'm going to stay. It's just hard to imagine that there can be so much out there, and that we have so much potential, and we just kind of sit back and choose to live lives of mediocrity because we don't want to fail. We don't want to be uncomfortable. It's garbage, man. It's garbage.
For the listeners, I don't want this just to be another podcast interview, you listen to it, you get some motivation from it, and then you go on with the rest of your life. Like, actually do these things. I mean, you're hearing it straight from Devon's mouth. Like, there was fear, there was struggle, there was adversity, there was doubt, there were setbacks along the way. Like, what is that looking like for you right now? You might be saying, "Well, Jim, I've been trying on the side to build this business for years, and I've invested time and money, and I just can't get there." Well, that's the path. Like, that is the journey. And what is the next fearful thing that you have to step into? Because usually what we want is on the other side of that fear. So do something about it. I mean, this is real, and Devon has lived it, and he's telling us exactly how, he lived his life, and the story that he's created is fascinating, and that story is there for you as well.
I agree with you, man, that there are times when you're gonna doubt yourself, you're gonna question yourself. You're like, what am I doing? Am I on the right path? And I talk about 1997, man. I'm trying to get to my third Olympic Games, and I'm in Evanston, Wyoming, myself and my two great men, and we are coaching ourselves. We are training 8 hours a day, and we're delivering pizzas at night. So there's this Jamaican word, cruff, Cruff, I guess is how you spell it, and it means like worthless, like no good, like a total waste of time. And I remember Jason, who incidentally was also an army captain from Jamaica. We would say, "Wow, I kind of feel like I'm turning into a cruff," and I go, "Yeah." Like on the surface of it, it felt like we had nothing going for us. We had no sponsorship. I'm injured, training 8 hours a day, delivering pizzas at night, trying to keep the dream alive. And I get it that we get into those places sometimes where, man, you're doing everything you can and you just can't seem to catch a break. And I just want to encourage you not to let go of the dream, though, is to keep trying something else. Just this weekend, I was in the backyard there splitting some wood, and it's winter's coming, man. And plus, it gave me a little workout. I'm not as young as I used to be. I'm discovering that's a part that sucks the most. But for some reason it came to mind. I remember thinking back to a conversation I was having with a football coach at the high school in Evanston where we were training, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he says, Devon, the thing that I find remarkable every time I talk to you is that you always seem so optimistic. And it's not that I never got frustrated and so on, but I never dwelled on the problems. I was always trying to think of a solution. What can I do next? In which new direction do I need to push? Who can I speak to? What new knowledge I need? What new skills I need to develop? And that's what all of us have to be doing every single time in order to kind of get past that, to get out of the mud, as you say, to move forward.
Yeah. For the listener who is bought in, Devon, what's an action item you could recommend in the next 24 to 48 hours, right? They're going through their life's journey, and they've had their ups and downs, and they have that Olympic dream of their own, whatever
Mhm.
form that takes. And they're saying, okay, I'm in, I'm motivated, I'm ready to go. Devon, what now? What can I do in the next 24 to 48 hours?
Yeah. So I think the first thing, like I said, they're ready to go. Because I was about to say, first of all, do a check to make sure that this goal is one you really want, right? So let's say you have done that. And you go, okay, this is what I really want. So what is the stuck? Where are you stuck? What's preventing you from moving forward? Okay, so once you have identified that stuck, it's clear that you don't currently have the skill to get past it. Otherwise, you would have. So, who can you go find to help you? It's okay to ask for help, man. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say, I don't know. We all need the wisdom to know what we don't know. And we need the humility, once we have identified what we don't know, to go find somebody who knows what it is that we don't know and have them advise us, have them coach us, have them help us. There ain't no shame in my game. If I don't know, I'm gonna, that dude, I don't know this. How can you help me? And that's been my secret, man. Every time I get stuck, yeah, so I'm very independent, and I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try, and then, but you can't keep hitting your head against the wall expecting different results. After a while, you realize, you know what? What I'm trying isn't working. I need help. Where can I go find that help?
And for the listeners, you've heard me talk about the environment of excellence before. I mean, when we were athletes, and it's easy to see that athletes need coaches, athletes need teammates, athletes need people around them that hold them to a high standard. Well, it's the same now. If you're no longer a competitor, you're out in the real world competing in the real world at whatever it is. Like, who are the people who are achieving what you want to achieve? Again, whether it's in business or in your personal life and relationships or fitness, like, who are the people who can help you? We see athletes have coaches, athletes have teammates, athletes are surrounding themselves with the right people. How about you? So that's a great piece of advice, Devon. Thank you for that. For the listener who wants to learn more about you, buy your book, follow you on social media, where can they go, Devon?
Yeah, man, it's easy. It's my website is devonharris.com, devonharris.com. And yeah, the store is on there. You can go get, one of my books. In social media, keep on pushing 88. Keep on pushing 88 is where you'd find me on Instagram and on Twitter. Keep on pushing always is where you'll find me on YouTube. And of course, I'm on Facebook. I'm the dude in the Jamaica Bobsled racing uniform, and I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Excellent. For the listeners, as always, I'll have all the links that Devon just shared. I'll put those in
Mhm.
the action plan for you, jimharshawjr.com/action, and you can get access to the action plan from this episode. Devon, thank you so much for making time to come on the show.
Hey, Jim, thank you so much for having me on. Thank you so much for this forum as well, man. I just want to encourage your listeners, your listening audience to continue to support the work that Jim is doing, because it's important work, and I think all of us can benefit from the amazing work that he's doing. So continue to support.
Thank you, Devon.